Good evening. It is 6:30. I'm going to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. We do have a quorum present. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the March 15th, 2022 meeting. If there are no additions or corrections, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by Sheila. Vote now. And vote passes 7-0. The next item is a regular hearing. Final plat of Riverview Industrial Park, Lot 11R1, Block A, on 35.317 acres, being a replat of Riverview Industrial Park, Lots 8R through 11R, Block A, out of the R.H. Barksdale Survey, abstract number 46, and the J. Chowning Survey, abstract number 1638. This is zoned Light Industrial District, located at the southwest corner of Stonewall Drive and Huffines Boulevard.
Good evening, Commissioners. This plat was submitted. The purpose of it is to combine lots for a large warehouse development. Staff did review it per our land development regulations and found several deficiencies that are listed in the staff memo. Our recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission disapprove the final plat of Riverview Industrial Park for the deficiencies listed above and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the listed deficiencies are corrected.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have any questions or concerns regarding this item? And in that case, then may I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to disapprove the final plat for the deficiencies that were listed and delegate to the staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the deficiencies are corrected.
Thank you. A motion by Francis.
Second.
Second by Aram. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. The next item is a public hearing for the final plat of TDH Stewart's Addition, lots 7R1, 7R2, and 7R3, Block B, on .69 acres out of John W. King Survey, abstract number 696, zoned single-family residential district, located at 520 and 506 North Charles Street, being a replat of Lot 7, Block B, TDH Stewart's Addition.
Good evening, Commissioners. Staff has reviewed the final plat and has found a list of deficiencies in the Chapter 6 regulations. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission disapprove the final plat of Stewart's Addition and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the listed deficiencies are corrected. The approved plat will be brought to the chair for signature.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions or concerns on this item? All right, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come forward, sign in, state your name. Having no one come forward, I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any discussion? If not, then may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we disapprove the final plat of the Stewart's Addition for the deficiencies listed above and delegate to staff the authority to accept and approve the plat once the listed deficiencies are corrected.
Thank you. Motion by Sheila.
Second.
Second by, oh, I heard Jordan. Second by Jordan. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. The next item is another public hearing, and this is for the consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 17 zoning of the Lewisville City Code by amending Section 17-31, Location Regulations for Sexually Oriented Businesses, by repealing said section and adopting a new Section 17-31, which amends certain definitions and standards outlined therein for clarity and to align with other related city regulations, and establishes a certificate of compliance process to signify compliance with the standards outlined therein.
Good evening, Commissioners. So I do have some updates to the sexually oriented business location regulations I'd like to give a brief presentation on. I'll start by giving the background, talk about some of the changes in Chapter 7, some of the research, study, and report findings that these changes are based on, and those references. Also, the purpose of our location regulations, the current regulations for sexually oriented businesses in Chapter 17, our proposed changes, and our recommendation. So as background, the City of Lewisville has a two-part system for regulating sexually oriented businesses in city limits. Licensing is outlined in Chapter 7 of Article 11 of the City Code, and this is mostly enforced by our police department. It was amended on March 7th. The location requirements are in Chapter 17, our zoning regulations, and so the purpose of tonight is to amend those regulations for consistency. So the definition of a sexually oriented business is in Chapter 7. A sexually oriented business shall mean an adult arcade, adult bookstore or adult video store, adult cabaret, adult motel, adult motion picture theater, escort agency, nude model studio, or sexual encounter center, or any commercial establishment of which the principal business is the offering of a service or the selling, renting, exhibiting of devices or any other items intended to provide sexual stimulation or sexual gratification to its customers, and which are distinguished by or characterized by an emphasis on matter depicting, describing, or relating to specified sexual activities or specified anatomical areas, except the term shall not include the businesses outlined in Section 243.004 of the Texas Local Government Code as it exists or may be amended. And so that is our definition in Chapter 7. What we updated in March for Chapter 7 is the definitions and the regulations throughout the SOB licensing ordinance. This was to increase the minimum age for SOB employees to 21 years to comply with state laws that were recently changed. We also wanted to provide that the penalty for a violation of our SOB licensing ordinance is a Class A misdemeanor as provided in the Texas Local Government Code. And we also wanted to require sexually oriented businesses to close between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And this is all backed up in research that talks about negative secondary effects of sexually oriented businesses, specifically that SOBs create increase of crime in the immediate area regardless of the location of an SOB, which may extend a significant distance into the surrounding area. The ambient crime risk can increase as much as 100% or more in an area where an SOB opens. Specifically, SOBs pose large statistically significant ambient public safety hazards in terms of prostitution, drugs, assault, robbery, and vandalism. Property values are negatively affected in areas surrounding SOBs, extending for a significant distance into surrounding areas. There's a concentration of sexually oriented businesses in one area can increase the negative effects of property values, and certain uses are inconsistent with SOBs and may suffer negative secondary effects. And this is backed up by a number of research, some of which is on the screen today, more of which was provided in the packet reference. So the purpose of our SOB location regulations in Chapter 17 is we want to promote the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the citizens of Lewisville. We want to establish reasonable and uniform regulations for sexually oriented businesses. We want to minimize the secondary harm inside or outside of SOBs, and we want to minimize harm caused by negative secondary effects. Our intent is not to restrict First Amendment rights, and we do not intend to restrict distributors and exhibitors of sexually oriented entertainment or their market. What our SOB location regulations state is that it shall be a violation of this chapter to locate or operate a sexually oriented business as defined herein within the city, within 1,000 feet of a district boundary line of any residential zoning district, within 1,000 feet of any other sexually oriented business, within 1,000 feet of the property line of any church, hospital, public park, school, or civic facility, daycare center, day nursery, or kindergarten legally operating under the zoning laws of the city, or within 1,000 feet of the property line of a lot devoted to a residential use. What we amended really was those definitions to provide clarity and consistency with the licensing regulations in Chapter 17. And we also established a certificate of compliance process to ensure that those distance requirements are being met. Those distance requirements are not new, but we have clarified the definitions, and we have established a certificate of compliance process to ensure that all SOBs, when they go through licensing, are meeting these distance setbacks. So based on this research study and report findings previously provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission and discussed today, and to minimize negative secondary effects, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the ordinance as set forth on the agenda caption. And I am here if you have any questions.
I have a question. And this would be kind of working backwards. If there's an existing SOB and then there's vacant land somewhere within that 1,000-foot barrier, and someone comes along and wants to rezone, say for residential, would that prevent them from
It would not
the
cause an
adjacent land?
existing SOB to shut down. If they were in operation legally and had gotten all their required licensing and certificate of compliance, and then another use came in near them, that would not force them to shut down. They could continue to operate.
But the other use potentially could still exist with that?
Yes, yeah.
Did this come about because of the zone ordinance that we're working on right now?
No, this came about separately. There were some changes in the state law. And then there was also studies out of Dallas showing increased negative effects in the early morning hours. So when we changed Chapter 7, the licensing requirements, we realized we needed to update 17 in order to not have any inconsistency.
I commend the city for getting ahead of it.
Michelle, I had a question for you, and I know you went through quite a bit in the presentation, but I guess when it says recommend approval of the proposed ordinance, I don't know that I'm clear on what we are approving, and I guess I need to understand.
Yeah, so the ordinance is in the packet, and what we're doing is we're replacing the section in our zoning today that's Chapter 7-31 with a revised 7-31. And what we've done is we've revised a number of our definitions. We've removed the definitions that were duplicates of Chapter 7 and just referred back to Chapter 7. And then we've, really the only substantive change that I think we've made is we've established a certificate of compliance process. Previously, we said you had to meet these distance setbacks, but we didn't really have a procedure
Process
to
in
ensure
place
that
to
that
ensure
happened.
that was happening.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that. I think I may have another question, Madam
Well, go
Chair.
ahead.
Michelle had another question for you. With respect to the process in place to make sure compliance is happening, is there, I guess, notice that goes out to the SOBs that are already in existence that says now, there's this process and how that works? I guess I need to understand. I want to understand that.
Yeah, so there's really no notice process, but any new SOBs coming to the city, usually they do call to inquire first about what our processes are, and we would inform them at that point. If they didn't, if they just went straight to a certificate of occupancy, which a lot of businesses do, if we would probably catch it at that CO review and then inform them, hey, you actually have to apply for the license and the certificate of compliance before you get the CO.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle? Okay, at this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come forward, sign in, state your name. Having no one come forward, I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, if there is no further discussion, may I have a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance as set forth in the caption.
Motion by Aram,
Second.
second by Sheila. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. And the final item on tonight's agenda is adjournment.
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention that the recommendation will go forward to the City Council on Monday, April the 18th, for a second public hearing and a final decision.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Francis,
Second.
second by Karen. Vote now. Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned.